My name is Erica Pedinero. I'm a medical assistant and a doula, but I am a mother first. My oldest child was vaccinated up to 6 months. He never had, a severe reaction like seizures or anaphylaxis shock, but he did display what I was told to be normal reactions after each round of his shots. He would get fussy. He wouldn't nurse. He slept a lot a few days after. He was always sick with a cough. He had congestion. Pediatrician would say, it's just a virus. Let it run its course. I was fed up. My baby was sick all the time. It seemed like there was nothing I could do. So I started asking mom friends if there was any way I could help him. I got tips on how to ease his cough, clear up the congestion, suggestions on how to get him to nurse better. One friend asked if I vaccinated. Well, of course I vaccinate. Why wouldn't I? No. Go read the ingredients and then tell me what you think. So I did. At that time, we were already, looking into the ingredients in the foods that we ate. And once I seen ingredients to vaccines, it only made sense. If I'm not going to ingest these, why would I inject them, and especially into my baby?
Woo! Woo!
Fast forward 7 years, I now have had twin girls and another son, all vaccine free. I have educated myself on vaccines and their risks versus their benefits, the illnesses that we vaccinate for and the symptoms of these illnesses and how to properly treat them. I've also learned on how to properly support the immune system and have realized we cannot inject health. In theory, immunization via vaccination sounds great, but when there are more risks than there are benefits,
Amen.
We need to rethink the way we are immunizing our children. We have created a specific court for vaccine injury and death. When we have to compensate those injured or killed by vaccines because manufacturers are not liable, we need to rethink how we're immunizing our children.
Yes. Amen.
Vaccines are not 100% safe nor effective. We have been lied to, and it's time the truth comes out. In February of last year, myself and two of my closest friends took a trip to Atlanta, Georgia to attend a meeting at the CDC, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, also known as ACIP. There we met Leanne, founder of Informed Choice USA. She took us under her wing and let us soar. We truly met some amazing people and have built amazing friendships, and anyone who can go should. For those who don't know, these ACIP meetings are 3 days long and occur 3 times a year, and today is one of those days. They actually, because of our pandemic, have made this month's virtual. So no one can go, no one can speak. You have to submit an online comment, because when you do go, you can tell them how you feel. You can tell them your thoughts. You can tell them that we know you're lying to us. So if you've been following what's going on in Colorado, where they passed a bill to restrict the ability to obtain exemptions, similar to what Michigan has done with their administrative rule, in that bill it says they will recommend the vaccines that the ACIP puts on the schedule. Just 2 days ago, Michigan Senator Curtis Hertel introduced 3 bills to amend the Public Health Code, School Code, and the State School Aid Act. In one of these bills, it amends a subsection that allows MDHHS to promulgate, quote unquote, promulgate rules under subsection 1 that adopt by reference the immunization schedule recommended by ACIP. We need to start paying attention, very, very close attention to these meetings. Like I said, they're public, except for this month. Anyone can go. You can register to do a public comment. If you can, do it. Go. We need to flood these meetings. Soon, these meetings are going to consist of talks about the COVID vaccine. We have already heard state officials, including our governor, talking about how we will be living a new normal for some time until the vaccine is available. We keep seeing the news talking about when the vaccine may be available. We cannot allow for other people's fears to rule over our rights. We are already seeing people being discriminated against for not wearing masks. Many people have hidden medical conditions preventing them. People with claustrophobia, anxiety, breathing issues. Even if they wanted to wear a mask, they couldn't. It won't be long before the mask discrimination turns into COVID vaccine discrimination. Will this vaccine be required for children to go to school? Will adults be required to be vaccinated in order to work in a public setting? Even if you do vaccinate, are you willing to be subjected to a fast-tracked vaccine with minimal safety testing? That is why we are here today. It doesn't matter if you vaccinate or not. It doesn't matter if you wear a mask or not. What matters is that our rights are being taken. Medical mandates do not belong in a free country. And if you agree with me, say this loud and proud. I do not consent.
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 Woo! Now, to get started, we have some amazing speakers for today. But we also have a few people set up and walking around with some Restore Freedom petitions. We have, I believe, a Governor Whitmer recall going around right now. If you haven't heard about them, check them out. We have a big cooler of water over here on the side if anyone's thirsty. I know it's hot, so go ahead and help yourselves. We have a bunch of goodies over there. Next up is one of Informed Choice Michigan's very own, Maija George.
Hello. Thank you all for attending with us here today. My name is Maija George. I'm the co-founder of Informed Choice Michigan. I'm a wife and a stay-at-home mother of 4.
Woo!
I have a child who is vaccine injured, and I'd like to tell you of how I ended up here. I actually used to be very pro-vaccine. I vaccinated my first child on schedule and plan to do the same with my second. When I went to give birth to my second child, Isaiah, there was this gut feeling that came over me that I should not vaccinate this baby. I had absolutely no other reason why not to. I had just 2 weeks prior given my oldest his 1-year rounds. Why did I not want this one vaccinated? I don't know. But something in my gut was just telling me not to. So I mentioned to not give him vaccines. After birth, while I was still on the operating table, he was taken out of the room to be examined, and in that time they administered his vitamin K and hepatitis B vaccine. Once I found out, I was disappointed, but then again, I had no real reason to not do them so I just brushed it off. I ended up continuing to give Isaiah his scheduled vaccines. Since he was already started off with them in the hospital, I figured why not. 2 months rounds come, and it was like a light switch that was turned off. Of course, I didn't realize this connection was with his vaccines. I remember I had such a happy, smiley, bright, beautiful, blue-eyed baby. And then one day it was just gone. He stared off in a dull, blank stare, off in the distance, all the time. After a few days of this, I began to worry something was wrong with my baby. I don't know what, but I just knew something was not right. I remember I cried so much wondering what had happened. I told family that there was something wrong, and I was told that I was fine, and I was just looking for something to be wrong with my baby. But something felt so wrong. As we continued on following the schedule, Isaiah fell sick repeatedly. Vaccines were given, and not long after, he would get sick. Ear infections and horrible respiratory problems. He was diagnosed with asthma and had ear tubes placed in due to how severe his ear infections would get. This is normal, though, right? Babies are usually sick often, aren't they?
No.
Finally, he turns 1 and due for his 1-year rounds. This time, he breaks out in a full body rash. Nothing like I had ever seen or heard of. My baby boy would spend all day and night itching his body till he was bloody. We had seen multiple doctors and dermatologists. The final conclusion we were given that it was just a viral rash with an unknown cause and no known treatment, but it should go away within 3 months. Then came vaccination time again. He got the rash again. This time is when I finally connected the dots. I remember looking back for other signs of side effects, and everything all made sense. I had ignored my gut instinct to protect him and ended up repeatedly hurting him. Why had no one else noticed this? Why had no one caught that he was having reactions to his vaccines? I had taken him into the emergency room so many times right after being vaccinated. Why did no one tell me these were side effects? Once I realized this, we stopped all vaccines immediately for him and his older brother. At this time, I did not know much about vaccines besides the fact that they were clearly hurting my child. After that, I spent a lot of time reading into them, and the more I learned, the more angry I became. None of my children would ever be vaccinated again.
Amen.
Isaiah is now 10 years old. He has a full body of scars that I have to see, and it hurts. He was diagnosed with autism at 6 and has a moderate cognitive impairment. Because of him, I now have 2 children who are completely vaccine-free. And I am telling you, it was like night and day compared to my first
Amen.
two. Wasn't sick babies normal? Wasn't it normal to have ear infections often? Not with these two. Never once did they have any problems.
Never.
This is not a coincidence. And I am sick of being told that these are all coincidences. Vaccines harmed my child. They have harmed and killed way too many children. I deserve the right to choose. You deserve the right to choose. Medical mandates do not belong in a free country. I have traveled to the CDC and attended the advisory committee on immunization practices a few times. I have sat and listened to those who held so much control over the vaccine schedule be so confused on their own data, twist and change words to make the best sense that they can when their own data didn't make sense to themselves. Where they used words like probably, generally considered safe, assumptions, uncertain, and unknown way too many times, and passed votes on adding things to our vaccination schedule. We deserve so much better than this. We deserve a true safety study.
Amen.
Where there is a risk, there must be a choice.
Must.
And I will continue for your right to choose. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lachelle Frankowiak. I am also a co-founder of Michigan Informed Choice, and I am totally unprepared, not gonna lie. But I just wanted to thank you all so much for showing up and let you know that how important this is to us, that you took the day to be here and share your stories and be with people who believe that we need to stand up for our God-given right of free will. Sorry. Alright, I'm gonna not choke up, and if everybody is willing, I would like you to chant with me and say, I am free.
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 Thank you.
Okay, so as president and chair of Salt and Light Global, our first speaker has served as federal judge in the United States courts, legal counsel in the U.S. Senate, and as senior assistant U.S. attorney in the Department of Justice. As an American diplomat, he is internationally recognized expert in constitutional law and good governance. His speech last year was inspirational. Please welcome back Professor William Wagner.
Hey! So are you marching for freedom today? You know, there's very few issues in this country, if you look around and turn on the news, where people from all sides of the political spectrum come together. This is one of them.
Stop harming our babies.
Now, we have a constitution that sets up our government, and guess who the government is? We the people. And we govern this state and this nation through representatives, many of them who work in this building here behind me, and a governor who serves across the street in an office. This country and this state will only function and will only work if we follow those constitutional structures of government. And since around April 30th, we've been operating more like a monarchy than a constitutional republic.
Dictatorship.
It's time to end governance by decree. And I don't care if there's a person across the way in that office in the governor's that has a D after their name or an R after their name. The bottom line is we, the people, and constitutional governance, and if you're not willing to do so, we, the people, are going to let you know about it.
Yeah.
Now, I know this is hard, especially for those of you that maybe have a little D after your name right now. But I'd like to think that if there was an R sitting in that office, that just as many MAGA hats would be here today if the same type of exercise of government power was going on. This is a matter of good governance under the rule of law. Will we be governed by edict and by decree without any constitutional authority, without any statutory authority? Now, right now, there's a number of cases in court, and we're hoping that very soon, when a judge reaches this issue, we haven't had a judge reach this issue yet, it'll resolve the question of whether or not a governor can govern with just the ink in their pen, as opposed to using the representatives of we, the people. You're going to have physicians, I'm sure, speak up here, and I know you have them in your organization. I'm a good governance guy, though. The science is on your side. Truth is on your side. But this is very important. Between now and next year at this time, if you don't want a government edict commanding you to submit to what normally would be a criminal assault and battery on your body, then you have to do this between now and next year.
I don't have enough gas. Speak
all
up.
of you are activists. And all of you have courage to stand for truth. And you're here today willing to be so in front of all the world. But unless each one of you get all of those folks that are in your sphere of influence to understand how serious this problem is, that we are truly being governed just like a dictator would be governed. If we cannot make this issue and all these other issues about good governance and the rule of law, we're going to be in a very dark place a year from now.
Amen.
And so my challenge to each of you is to take that courage that brought you here and that commitment that brought you here, and you go out and every week you bring one person to get to that same level of commitment where you are, and to stand up and to publicly be unafraid to say, this is wrong, this ends here. God bless you. Stay strong. We the people, constitutional, good governance, under the rule of law, not by edict or decree. God bless you. Stand
Down! Back! Down!
Let's give another round of applause to Professor William Wagner. All right, with a PhD in cellular and molecular biology. Our next speaker is an educator, consultant, author, and speaker for medical freedom and health organizations across Michigan. She brings a wealth of knowledge about the molecular mechanisms by which vaccines may cause injury. We are honored to have her. Give a warm welcome to Dr. Christina Parks.
Places I probably shouldn't be. You got this!
Afternoon. Sorry about that. I see a lot of familiar faces out here. So some of you know who I am and some of you don't. How many of you know who Dr. Judy Mikovits is? So as you know, watching her is like kind of drinking from a fire hose. And so I made it my personal mission to try to sort of backtrack and figure out exactly what she's saying and sort of bring you the simplified version. So I hope you'll appreciate that. But so I've taken to watching a lot of her videos while I'm doing all kinds of other things, cleaning the house. The other day, I'm cleaning my office and I have one of her videos playing in the background. It's saying a lot of things I already know. And then she makes the following comment, more or less. Did you know that the Ebola outbreak of 2014, Ebola was spreading like the flu? Now, if you don't know, Ebola is typically only spread through body fluids, so it really doesn't spread very widely. And it's fairly easy to contain, which is important because it has 50 to 90% mortality. So she says, again, did you know that the 2014 Ebola outbreak had spread like the flu, and they had to use, wait for it, hydroxychloroquine to shut it down. And what? I go back and rewind it and play it 3 or 4 times, and I get on my computer and I get on PubMed because that's what geeky scientists do.
Yeah.
And did I find out if that was true? I can't say that I did. I didn't find out it was true. I know that prior to that, the largest Ebola outbreak was less than 500 people. And the outbreak in 2014 was about 30,000 people. So what's going on here? All right? Do I know if they use hydroxychloroquine to shut it down? No, I can't say for sure that I do know that. But what I did find in PubMed was a study from 2013 showing that chloroquine is an effective antiviral against Ebola virus. And that it inhibits Ebola virus in cells, but not only that, 90% of mice that were pre-treated with chloroquine and that exposed to the Ebola virus lived. 100% of monkeys that had an intraperitoneal shot of chloroquine, and then were exposed and got Ebola virus lived. So is it quite possible that the Ebola virus was spreading like the flu? Based on the numbers, I'd say yes, it is possible. Is it quite possible that they used hydroxychloroquine to shut down the spread? I think it is. And so again, the question is, what information are they withholding from us? I just found a paper showing that we have a drug that's effective against the most deadly virus of our time. And none of us knew about it. So not only is hydroxychloroquine effective against Ebola, it's effective against hepatitis B. It's effective against HIV/AIDS. And as we know, it's effective against SARS, which they've known since 2003. And yet, they lie to us again and again and again. And we know, and who was the author on this review of hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine that showed it has the most broadly antiviral, antifungal, and it's got antibacterial activity as well. The most broadly antiviral activity in history, Roush. You'll recognize his name because this French scientist actually treated 1,000 patients successfully with a cocktail of hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc. All right, but they don't want you to know that. All right, we know that the parent molecule of hydroxychloroquine, the synthetic one is chloroquine, the parent molecule of that is quinine, a natural substance from the chinota tree, and that quinine is in tonic water, which could theoretically be taken, I'm making no medical advice here, with 30 milligrams of zinc or so, and may shut down viral replication. We know that hydroxychloroquine works through about 5 different mechanisms to be antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. Not only that, how many of you have heard of pandas?
Yeah.
All right, one of the problems with pandas is we know that some of these bacteria go inside our cells. So do some funguses. They go inside our cells and hide. Well, guess what? Hydroxychloroquine destroys them inside your cells. How many of your children are suffering because they are withholding these life-saving and I don't just mean life-saving in terms of death, I mean life-saving in terms of actually living a life instead of trying to survive every day, as many of us parents are. So would our government really withhold a life-saving treatment that can be used to save lives and prophylactically to open back up our government? Would they really do that? I know I'm speaking to the choir here. Why? Why would they do such a thing? Well, let's look at why. What I also found when I was studying chloroquine is that just this year, a paper came out looking at about 24 different chloroquine analogs. What's a chloroquine analog? It's something they generated in a lab that's a little bit different than chloroquine. Well, chloroquine's already extremely effective and relatively safe. You know, it's safe at low doses and relatively safe even at high doses. So why would they look at something else? In fact, they found it was 92% effective and 97% safe relative to all the other things that they were studying. So why would they look at something else? Because if we change it by an atom or two, we can patent it and charge you for it. All right, so we're going to withhold life-saving medications. They took the medication Suriname off the market, which one child took it and by the end of the day could speak again. I bet they're going to change it by a couple of molecules, a couple of atoms, and they're going to put it back on and charge you an arm and a leg. In the meantime, while they're waiting for us to give a drug that's going to be, 18 times more expensive, less effective, and probably less safe, in the meantime, we suffer and our children suffer. So, is profit the only reason why Big Pharma wants to shut it down, or do our governments have another thing in mind? And could that thing be controlled? We've seen how much they're controlling us by withholding hydroxychloroquine. If we had prophylactic use of low-dose hydroxychloroquine, which stays in your body for 50 days, so you take a low dose for a week, it's protecting you for 3 months. I don't think. Right, instead of using prophylactic hydroxychloroquine to shut down COVID-19, they are controlling what we can do, whether our children can go to school, when they can go to school, whether they have to wear a mask. Basically, they're micromanaging every aspect of our lives. How much more will they control us if there is an outbreak of something like Ebola? Right? If they need to control us, if their little plan isn't working, suddenly there's an outbreak of Ebola and there's no known cure. So we all have to stay inside, or whatever it is we have to do, their little Simon says or whatever they tell us. Go outside. Nope, come inside. Oh, Simon didn't say. So as we all know, they're using the public health to control access to our children's education, whether we can work in healthcare, and now whether any of us are able to go to work at all. Soon they'll control our ability to travel, our ability to be in the public space, and even our ability to keep our own children if we test COVID positive. I debated about whether to come forward and tell you guys that hydroxychloroquine was a likely cure for Ebola. I thought if I say that, people will think I'm mad. Then I kind of chuckled to myself and said, well, you know what? I am mad. I'm mad that we're debating about somebody's picture on a bottle of syrup when the CDC found in 2002 that black boys were 236% more likely to get autism
amen!
if they were vaccinated on time with the MMFMF. And we still haven't had a hearing in Congress about it.
True!
I'm mad that we can talk about police brutality in the public sphere, but we can't talk about how many thousands of African American lives could have been saved if we had promoted the use of vitamin D and hydroxychloroquine. I'm mad that they're about to test the new COVID vaccine on black children. And they're telling us that that's a necessity.
We do not consent!
I'm mad that the WHO, the WHO, had a campaign that sterilized millions of African women, and that's not a significant enough issue of racial equality to make the news. We're being asked to stay home and give up our livelihoods while our governor is putting COVID-positive patients in our nursing homes and killing thousands of Michiganders.
Terrible!
Well, I have a word for you, Gretchen Whitmer. You serve at the consent of the governed, and you have lost that consent.
We do not consent!
Gretchen Whitmer, slavery is a big topic in the news today. And the African American community wants you to know, and we want you to know, we are not your chattel. The Democratic Party, you have had the black vote for a century, for decades. And what have you done with it? You have manipulated us.
Squandered it.
And you have lied to us. And now you want to mandate vaccines to destroy the brains and the bodies of our children. Well, I have a word for the party of slavery. To the party of slavery, the Democratic Party, we are not your chattel. And I'll call on all Democrats who believe as I do to rise up. We've got to take that party back. If you're a Democrat, take your party back. I don't believe they represent the views of the average Democrat. To the FDA, who banned hydroxychloroquine. To the CDC, who turned a blind eye when they were told that their DTP vaccine was killing girls in Africa at 10 times the rate of those who are unvaccinated. And to the CDC, who has yet to hold a hearing on the MMR vaccine damaging the brains of black boys, I will tell you, we are not your chattel. We are in a time when we are losing our freedoms at an unprecedented rate. Just this week, the social justice warriors pulled down a statue of Francis Scott Keyes, the writer of our national anthem. American patriot Dinesh D'Souza reminds us that our anthem is the only one that ends in a question. And what is that question? It's whether in the heat of battle, our flag is still waving. Are we done with this battle, or are we going to win? We're going to win. Right? Are we going to stop fighting, or are we going to continue fighting? We are going to fight. Our flag is still waving, and we intend to win. I would ask you to join with me in the last stanza of singing, and I am not a singer, so please bear with me, of our national anthem. So we can sing this question and answer it ourselves. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I'll leave you with this last thought. In the words of the irrepressible Del Bigtree, be brave!
Be brave! Be brave! We do not consent!
feel I might make you speak for me next week.
All right, let's give another big warm thank you for Dr. Christina Parks. The following speaker is an unapologetic realist and constitutionalist. He contracted Lyme disease in 2013, lived misdiagnosed for years, and with a late diagnosis and the disease's advancement, continued to endure chronic medical issues. But that didn't stop him, and now as a mayor for a great city in Michigan, he has announced his campaign to run for state representative for the 58th district. Let's welcome the mayor of Hillsdale, Adam Stockford.
Thank you, Erica. Hello, folks. How are you today?
Hey!
And thank you for welcoming me here to Washington, D.C. That was a joke. I think you guys all got it. If there ever was a mini D.C., it's Lansing, Michigan. Place where everything is constantly happening, but nothing ever gets done.
Yes!
So, I came today because I've got a medical story to tell as well. It's not about vaccines, but it is about government interference in treatment for something that was very serious in my life. In my late teens, early 20s, I was a boxer. If you know anything about boxers, I was in peak physical condition. 8-9 hours a day I was training. That fall, and excuse me, Erica, but it was 2003, not 2013. That's okay, that's all right. I fell ill. I started to run intermittent fevers. I started to get terrible headaches. I started to get something which they call brain fog. I would literally forget where I was at, what I was doing, have to stop and recheck myself. And it didn't make sense because here I was, 23-year-old kid, in probably the most demanding sport that there is, physically demanding sport that there is, and I was in great condition. So I knew immediately that something was seriously wrong with me. I started going to visit doctors' offices. The first thing that they told me was that I was developing what's called pugilistic dementia, which the layman's term is called punch drunk. They said I got hit in the head too many times. They gave me an MRI to confirm that diagnosis, and they saw that the myelin sheath on my nerves was being what's called demyelinated, which is being eaten away from the nerves, leaving the nerve exposed. There's a couple things that do this. The first thing that comes to mind is multiple sclerosis. So quick and easy. They said I had MS. They started treating me with it with steroids, things of that nature. The next year, over the next year and a half, I progressively got worse and worse. And I kept going to the doctor and telling them, something else is going on here. MS doesn't explain the fevers, but nowhere could I get anyone to listen to me. The following fall, I got a call from my neighbor. I picked up the phone and he said, Adam, I know what you have. It's not MS, it's Lyme disease. You know how I know? Because my daughter's going through the same thing. And I was skeptical at first when he said that because I didn't remember getting bitten by a tick at any point. So I went to the doctor, the neurologist I was seeing, and I asked her to give me a Lyme disease test. You know what she said? Have you been to Connecticut? I said, no, I haven't been to Connecticut. She said, well, then you don't have Lyme disease because there's no Lyme disease in Michigan.
Yep, said the same thing.
And I said, are you sure? Because my neighbor told me that they have it, and they have got a positive diagnosis of it. Not a clinical diagnosis, a Western blot test, which came back positive. Long story short, we got into an argument. She refused to give me the test. 14 doctors later, the Michigan Lyme Disease Association got me an appointment with a gentleman in Saginaw. His name was Michael Ledke. and he's a specialist up there. I went to see him for one appointment. Ledke said, well, I'm going to give you a Western blot test, but I'm 99% sure that you've got Lyme disease. Granted, folks, this is 3 years after I started going to see doctors, and this is 1.5 years after I started telling them that I had Lyme disease. By this time, I was basically bedridden. I had to be helped by my mother into the car to get to the doctor's appointments. So Dr. Ledke, he gave me the test, which came back positive. He gave me another one for good measure, which came back positive again. And I started being treated the way which he treats, which was with massive amounts of antibiotics to start with, and then antiviral medication later. He told me I'd get worse before I got better. The first 3 months was terrible. After that, I started improving. I wasn't the only one. He had hundreds of patients. This man has a year-long waiting list to get into his office to even get to where he can see you the first time. Now, the whole time I'm going there, which over the next 5 years, I see Dr. Ledke every month. The whole time I'm going there, the medical establishment is constantly trying to shut this man down. They sent the DEA into his office. Point is, they didn't like the way that he was treating people. They didn't agree with it. It didn't fit the medical establishment's. It didn't fit their standard procedure. So, medical choice, medical freedom is, of course, about more than mandated vaccines. Now, I've adopted a personal philosophy in government, which is anything that gives you more freedom is a good thing, and anything that takes away freedom from you is a bad thing. And if we're going to err in government, we should always err on the side of freedom. When all this COVID stuff was going on, being someone with a degree in politics from Hillsdale College, the first thing I thought of was, I need to go talk to my legislator, because he's the one that represents me. My state senator who represents me, he's the Senate Majority Leader. This man's the most powerful Republican in Michigan. I went to both of them dozens of times and begged them for help through this whole thing, to get our city back open, to get our people back to work, and for them to see what was really going on. And what I kept hearing from them is that they didn't have any authority in the matter. And that is complete baloney, because the legislature is, by Constitution, the most powerful branch of the government, and it's meant to be. The reason that it is because it's the one that's most answerable to the people of their district, or the people of Michigan. But, as you all know, over the past 50 years, the legislature has advocated more and more of their authority away to the judicial branch, which legislates from the bench, to the governor's office, which, as we've all seen now, passes executive orders, and through alphabet agencies. And it doesn't matter which one it is. It doesn't matter if it's MDOT, or it's the Department of Environmental Quality, or it's your local health department. These are not elected people. Constitutionally speaking, they do not have the authority to pass laws. But they pass these things called codes and standards, which have the force of law, where if you don't follow them, you can be thrown in jail. You can have your property stripped from you. But it's all unconstitutional. So at the end of the day, what I figured out is that all this stuff, what happened to me with my quest to try to get a positive diagnosis for Lyme disease, the stuff we're speaking about right now with mandatory vaccines, it isn't about health, and it's never been about health. It's about authority. It's about centralizing authority within a centralized government. So all I can tell you, and I know I've got self-interest in this because I'm running for the legislature myself, but all I can tell you is, if you want to make a difference, make sure you vote in primaries. It's a very important thing. Make sure you vote for constitutionally minded people, and make sure when you're talking to people that are running, doesn't matter if it's for the state house or the state senate, but you make sure that they understand the way that government's supposed to work, and and that they pledge to you that they will try to grab some authority away from these other institutions that, constitutionally speaking, is not supposed to have the authority, and to try to bring that back to the State House. Because the State House, right behind us, this is the people's house. It's supposed to be the people's house, which makes it our house. So I appreciate all your time today, and I'm 100% behind what you guys are trying to do. Thank you.
Hey guys.
Okay, hey, all right.
So, my name's Maija, and I get the honor of introducing the next speaker to you. As a mediator, restorative justice facilitator, and attorney, our next speaker has worked in the legal field for 19 years and also owns her own firm. She handles cases of religious freedom and good governance in the U.S. Supreme Court and in courts across the state. She's an advocate and a fighter for our God-given rights to freedom, and most recently started the Restore Freedom Michigan Ballot Initiative to amend our state constitution. Please welcome Attorney Katherine Henry.
He wants to talk so we can hopefully keep some peace.
I guess I'm really tall for this setup here. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful day and what a wonderful afternoon. It's so nice to see you all today. This is a way better scenario than the other rallies I've spoken at the last few months, where we've been, I don't know, 40, 50 degrees and a ton of rain and all that stuff. So this is a much better scenario. All right, guys. So as she said, I am an attorney, a mediator, restorative justice facilitator, but most recently I am the founder of the Restore Freedom Initiative. For anybody who doesn't know what the Restore Freedom Initiative is, it's a petition to amend our state constitution. It's not a general revision. It's going to open up the whole constitution for changes. It is amending specific pieces of our state constitution that will be put on the ballot for November 3rd this year, where you will be able to vote yes or no on the amendment. You can follow along with me today if you want to look at restorefreedommi.com. You can also contact our team at restorefreedommi@gmail.com. We have well over 1,500 petition circulators all across the state. It is amazing to see the team of people that we have. We have nearing 500 stationary signing hubs, businesses, homes all across the state, where people can go and sign at any time during those business hours. We've had hundreds of freedom rallies and signing events all across our state, and we are continuing to do so. In fact, I'll be in Detroit tomorrow. I'm going to be in Traverse City and somewhere by Muskegon, I think, on Saturday. I can't even tell you, but where I will be, you can see on restorefreedommi.com in our list of events, and I would love to see you guys there. At this point, our team is actually going through the signatures we've collected thus far, so we could try to make sure we're keeping up on all those signature pages coming in, the thousands and thousands of signatures we get every single day. I can tell you that as of 5 days ago, we already had signatures in 80 of the 83 Michigan counties. So, to those of you who don't necessarily know what this petition does, first of all, it clarifies and strengthens our due process rights. We know we have those rights, but what does it really mean to say you have due process rights? Well, what it means with this petition, when this amendment gets put into our state constitution, it means that the government will have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, not just in criminal cases, in any case, if they want to take away your life, your liberty, or your property, the government will have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it is necessary because you are depriving somebody else of their life, liberty, or property. And if the government doesn't meet that burden, they do not get to deprive you of your life, liberty, or property.
Amen.
We also spell out and clarify the separation of powers. As we've seen, there's been problems where we have one branch that likes to take away the powers of another branch and create laws when they're only supposed to enforce them.
Yep.
We have portions in here that clarify, this is not a new thing, this is something our government and the people of our state should already know, but we're going to make it exceedingly clear for them that emergencies do not diminish our rights, nor do they increase government power, ever. We also clarify how to interpret state law in a way that probably was always just boring and something that most people ignored, except for if you heard it on an episode of Law and Order. But now we hear it every day on the news. Whether you can follow a 1945 act or whether you have to pay attention to a 1976 act on the same topic. The answer is yes, you do. You can't cherry pick laws. If it doesn't work for us, it shouldn't work for the governor.
Amen.
So we clarify that that's how it works, and we also clarify something that already exists, which is that unconstitutional laws and unconstitutional government actions are void on their face. It's as though they don't even exist. So despite what our legislature has told us when they filed this lawsuit against the governor, that we have to wait for the courts to tell us that it's okay to exercise our rights, in the meantime, we have to keep following these illegal and unconstitutional executive orders. No, we don't. They're unconstitutional on their face. They have no force and effect of law whatsoever.
Amen.
Oh, and I lost my notes already. So something that we spell out in here is that a constitution's most basic functions are, first of all, to create the form and structure of government, but also to define and limit the powers of government, and to provide for the protection of rights and liberties of the people. And any law or governmental action that is repugnant to the supreme law of the land, which is our Constitution, is void on its face and is as inoperative as though it had never been passed. And this is because the people and not the government possess the absolute sovereignty. We streamline and clarify the roles and functions of our courts, and we require concrete methods of government transparency, accessibility, and accountability. We need to know what the government is doing and why they're doing it at all levels. I don't care if it's a school board meeting, I don't care if it's the governor, everyone in between. This is a government by the people. We have the sovereign power. We can't hold them accountable if there's no true transparency, if there's no proper accessibility for us to get to them. And if you don't have those two things, you don't have accountability, and the whole system, the Republican form of government that we're guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 4, does not exist without that.
Does not exist.
So we ramp up that government transparency, accessibility, accountability. Those things do not belong in statutes like they currently are. They belong in the Constitution because it goes to the fundamental aspect of how we exercise that sovereign power here. So we remove FOIA loopholes and Open Meetings Act loopholes. We mandate roll call votes and reporting of those votes in public for any public body whatsoever. No hiding behind a voice vote anymore.
Amen.
If you're not willing to put your name behind your vote, you shouldn't be making that vote.
100. Oh my God, no.
We place the burden on the government to disclose the information, not on the public to request it. Now, obviously, there's indefinite amounts of information that are out there, so the government's not going to put everything out there, but all those decisions that are happening on a regular basis at public meetings, we need to know that information before we go into those meetings, and we need to know the final decisions when we come out of those meetings.
Amen.
And it's the government's job to post that, not our job to request it and pay for it. So we need to get back to restoring our Republican form of government. And like I said, it's guaranteed to us in the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 4. What this means and how we're going to do that is to remove the power of unelected commissions that perform functions that properly belong to the legislature or the executive branch or judicial branch, those that we vote for, those that we have that connection to. Any unelected commissioner or bureaucrat should not be making decisions that affect our lives in any way, shape, or form. We also clarify that executive orders have no effect on regulating the people. In fact, governmental internal operating procedures, administrative rules and regulations, like DHS, executive orders, and any other similar regulations have no regulatory effect upon the people, and that language will go right into our state constitution. We will have no more unelected officials or commissions even drafting our laws. So currently right now, I don't know if you knew this, I didn't really recognize this before, but I always elected our legislators thinking that they were talking with the people, doing the research, investigating things in their areas, in their districts, and then as a legislator, they were drafting appropriate laws to either repeal a regulation or add one as appropriate, and then they were voting on that. Our state constitution, as it's currently written, says that we have a legislative council of attorneys that get paid to do the research, to draft the laws, and then to give the legislators advice on how to vote. Well, that's why a lot of our legislators don't even read the bills before they vote on them. Amen. I can tell you they didn't read Senate Bill 858 on April 30th when they voted it. And guess what? They voted on it, both the House and the Senate as amended. And among many other things, it required masks with no medical exemptions. Most of them didn't even know that. That's a sad day. That's not one legislator, that is most of them. We need to get back to a point where the people drafting the laws are the people that we elect to do that job.
Amen.
This is not a government of attorneys. I earned my law degree, but you shouldn't have to have a law degree just to participate in our government. That's not the system of government that we have.
Amen.
I'm going to wait a second. Administrative agencies are no longer going to be allowed to create rules and regulations for the people. They can create rules and regulations for themselves. But Section 28 of our state constitution says now, under Article 6, it'll be amended to say that administrative action will now have no effect on individuals and that no administrative officer... It's a great point. They're all celebrating for us. Okay, I think we're good. No administrative officer or agency may act to affect the private rights or private licenses of individuals. Enough of this. Enough of this situation where Carl, the barber, has to be threatened not only with criminal action, but with regulatory action from an agency that's full of a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. Enough is enough. So, we also have a section in here that specifies that from now on, any bill that will restrict the people and not just the government can restrict themselves all they want, but any bill that's going to restrict our freedoms will only be enacted if it has passed both houses of the legislature by a 2/3 vote or has been approved by a 2/3 majority of the electors. If it's not good enough to pass a supermajority vote, it shouldn't be in place to regulate the 10 million people in this state. And any current law that's restricting us, the people, and not just the government, that was enacted in this manner shall be enforceable. It will remain enforceable. But if it wasn't enacted that way, guess what? It's not going to be enforceable anymore. So that brings me to Section 51. Section 51 is one that our governor has so lovingly referred to in, I believe, every single one of her emergency power executive orders this year. It's the public health and general welfare. So it currently reads that the legislature shall pass suitable laws for the protection and promotion of the public health. They're told to pass laws to tell us how to protect our own health. We're taking that sentence out. And it will say that any law made to promote the public health must be in accordance with all state and federal constitutional provisions. And that every person, whether you're young or old, male or female, born or preborn, every person has the right to their own bodily integrity. And no public body or private business can impose a requirement upon customers or employees that is likely to impair the individual health or safety of anyone. So when you have masks that you're required to wear to be in a gym, for example, I think common sense tells us that's not healthy at all. That is likely to impair the health or safety of any particular individual who does that. Let's bring common sense and actual science and data back into things here. So that brings me to a couple of interesting things that have come out of the Michigan Supreme Court recently. So although they're kind of punting a little bit and they're not taking on these cases directly, and even despite what people have said about the order that came out for Carl's case, it only has like 4 sentences. It doesn't do all the things that some of the media have proclaimed that it does. But there are some highlights from the Supreme Court's orders that came out on June 4th and June 5th. So it's interesting that Justice Clement, in her opinion in the June 4th order, she says, until a vaccine for COVID-19 is invented, our society will be living with the risk of spreading this disease and the argued necessity of emergency measures to mitigate that spread. Where's the science and data on that? And where in the Constitution does it say that we get to live based off fear and have the government tell us that we need to have this stuff injected into our bodies? Don't even get me started on vaccine manufacturers' inserts, because I got a whole lot more on that topic. But then we have Justice Markman, who does see it for what it actually is. One of the things he said when he agreed that the Michigan Supreme Court should take the case and allow the legislature's lawsuit to jump over the Court of Appeals and be handled immediately by the Michigan Supreme Court, this is what he said on that topic. This is an issue of the greatest practical importance to the more than 10 million people of this state. The validity of the executive orders declaring a state of emergency and thereby enabling a single public official to restrict and regulate travel, assembly, business operations, educational opportunities, freedoms and civil liberties, and other ordinary aspects of the daily lives of these people, including matters of crime and punishment and public safety. To put it even more specifically, the present applications to jump over the Court of Appeals place into question the entirety of the processes and procedures by which the executive orders that have defined nearly every minute and nearly every aspect of the lives of we the people of Michigan for more than the past 2 months were fashioned into law. He seems to get it. This is all about our liberties. None of this is okay. But he's not the only one. Justice Zara also knows this. And Justice Zara says, this case presents palpable constitutional questions that are of compelling interest to every resident, business, and employer in Michigan. The instant matter, the lawsuit the legislature has against the governor, is arguably the most significant constitutional question presented to this court in the last 50 years. He continues by saying that each resident's personal liberty is at stake. That's what we've been fighting all along, but it brings, this whole COVID-19 thing brings it right into the forefront, and we're going to be able to use this information to bring it into the homes of every person across the state of Michigan so they can understand exactly what we've been fighting for. Justice Viviano also shares with us the same concept here, that there's no issue of greater importance, of greater public interest or importance than the resolution of whether the governor was within her constitutional authority to deprive the 10 million plus residents and the thousands of business owners of Michigan of their personal freedom and economic liberty. So we must pay attention to these things, as well as what Justice Viviano said in Carl's case, which is that it is incumbent on the courts to ensure decisions are made according to the rule of law, not hysteria. And that courts decide legal questions that arise in the cases that come before them according to the rule of law, and that they hope that this great principle, essential to any free society, including ours, will not itself become yet another casualty of COVID-19. Freedom, liberty, that's what this is all about. So, in other words, nothing can be required upon us to conceal our identities or stop us from breathing fresh air or requiring us to have COVID-19 vaccines. So don't let the government control your health any longer. Sign our Restore Freedom petition to put freedom on the ballot in November. Thank you, everyone.